All right. Well, listen, we predicted this, and then we fell off this. Then we came back onto Kyler Murray, and at the very end, the Arizona Cardinals did indeed go with Kyler Murray. Did they make the right move here, Nick?
Even though it's not the move I would have made, you can't say they don't have a plan. And it is an exciting plan, and it's a plan unlike any team that I can think of in NFL history, the coach-quarterback combo that they are running with. Doesn't mean it won't work. It's just new. And we have seen a lot of new things in the last few years in the NFL that we did not think could work in the past, have great success. Now, he has to take the Russell Wilson approach to avoiding contact. He has to understand that the offensive line he had at Oklahoma is going to be better than the offensive line he has at Arizona.
Great observation.
Right. I mean, in comparison to the competition.
The Oklahoma offensive line last year voted in college football the best offensive line, and the offensive line Baker Mayfield had was outstanding also.
And Arizona last year might have had the worst offensive line in the entire NFL. So life's about to get very different for him. And I think the toughest part for Kyler is when you, in high school football, go 42-0. In your 1 year of college football, you go 12-2. He's about to lose more games in his first 2 months of football than he had lost since maybe his entire football career, from high school to right now. So there will be a mental adjustment. There will be a physicality adjustment. But the way he can throw the football, if he can deal with the physicality, if he is not below whatever the minimum threshold is, then he will be successful because he does have all the tools and all the intangible things you want a quarterback to have. Arizona, I feel like, from the moment Kyler said, I'm going to play football, this pick was in. Everything else was, you're doing your due diligence, you're making sure, but this is where they wanted to go and where they ultimately always were going to go. We'll see what happens with Rosen, but I'm not going to sit here today and say this is a bad pick just because it's not what I would have done. There is logic to it, and there is an enormous upside to getting it right.
The number one thing about selecting a quarterback in the first round is do you have conviction? Can you sit in a group of people and convince them that this is your guy? And that's what you have to be able to do, regardless of however you've broken it down. If you have a first-round grade on them and you don't have quarterbacks that are ranked way ahead of them, then you have to be able to take your guy. That's what it's about, because now it's about trying to put a system around him. The pick's in. You can't do anything about that. Now how are they going to support him? Because it's just as quick as he was selected number one, who was selected number two?
Nicky Bosa.
Okay, and we just went over the defensive line with our staff. Dusty, our statistician, went over who they're going to have starting.
For San Francisco.
Oh, my goodness.
DeForest Buckner, D. Ford, number 3 overall pick, Solomon Thomas from a few years ago.
Right, so now they have to be able to support him and be able to protect him, and you have to make sure that regardless of how he performs early, that you have to be able to support him emotionally. You got to get some other weapons around him, and that defense is going to have to be outstanding to try to create some turnovers for them. But I can understand when you hire Cliff Kingsbury as your coach, who has a limited pro experience, you have to let him select a quarterback because that's the reason why you hire him as the head coach.
All right, before we move on to Josh Rosen, tell me why Cardinals fans should be more excited this year with their pick than they were last year when we moved up to get Josh Rosen, when they were excited, when we had the same conversation. Oh, the Cardinals have their quarterback now. They're happy. This is the guy they wanted.
Just turn on the film. I mean, if you can convince yourself that he's not going to be too small, what you have is one of the most electric quarterbacks in college football history. And you have a guy, one of the big things with guys who are under 6 feet tall is, can they see over their own offensive lineman? How many snaps are you going to take under center? 0? I mean, they're going to have him in Cliff Kingsbury's offense, unless he adjusts what he does. He's going to be in the shotgun at least 80% of the time. So that's less of a concern. What C really made the point on repeatedly, and it made me look at his tape again, look at his highlights or his games again, is if you remove the running, if you remove the throws on the run, and you just look at him in the pocket, he is as accurate to all 3 levels as anybody we had in college football.
Yes, he's still a first-rounder.
Right. And so that's because my concern is at his size, we know all the mobile quarterbacks have to run less in the pros, but at his size, I feel like he's going to have to run a lot less, but his accuracy and his arm talent is still, that is what made him the #1 pick.
My biggest concern is not his height or his size. My biggest concern is Cliff Kingsbury and the air raid offense. They've had a problem in college football, pass protection. They don't have the same regard for pass protection that we do in the NFL. That's the reason why Chip Kelly and some of these other offenses have failed. So I believe that Kyler is going to get hit. So for me, Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to have to convince me that he has put together a comprehensive system as far as protecting the quarterback, because Seattle, as much as they've tried to do, and they haven't done it by spending money on the offensive lineman, Russell Wilson is lucky to be at this stage of his career and not have sustained some significant injuries with the amount of running around and stuff he's had to do. I don't believe Kyler has the same body type as Russell, so I am concerned about that.
All right, so the other part of this is that at the end of the night, Josh Rosen was still on this team. So if they do not make a move now, will go into the season with 2 quarterbacks. What does this mean for his future?
Well, listen, if he does not get traded in the next 72 hours, if he doesn't get traded during the draft, then they will go into, I would imagine, training camp with him. They'll call it a competition. It won't be. And what they would hope, I would imagine, is that in the preseason, he looks really good. He looks like a more mature, more confident quarterback.
But he would be the backup.
He would be the backup for the time being, and that if a team sustains an injury or around the draft next year, that they can get more than they could get for him this year, because I'm sure they had offers for Josh Rosen, but the offers must have been, forget a first-round pick, forget a second-round pick. I think the offers were worse than even that. And that's why he's still on the Arizona Cardinals.
You can't have those 2 kids in the locker room at the same time. You got to get rid of Josh Rosen. You got to get him off the roster today. Okay. You have to be able to trade him for a second-round pick in tonight's draft or a future first-round pick, which I believe a lot of NFL, especially the better teams. What would New England? You know they're going to be drafting somewhere between 28 and 32 next year. Why wouldn't they give up next year's first-rounder for him? You cannot have those same kids in the building, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen at minicamp. Josh Rosen will be so much better than Kyler, and Kyler will start to lose his confidence. So now as his teammates around him, how do you support the kid who was the #1 player in the draft when we have a kid who just drafted last year who we will see? Because he will be better. He's been in the league a year. He understands football better. He'll get rid of the football. His reads will be cleaner. So if you're going to support Kyler, you better have a hell of a running game. You better revamp that offensive line. And you need to get Josh Rosen out of that organization today. He can't be on the team tomorrow.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.